Good evening. Good evening, everybody. We need to start the program. I'm Jim Dish, president of the Chicago Midwest chapter of the National Television Academy. Welcome to the 12th annual Silver Circle Awards presentation. Tonight we honor 8 outstanding individuals who have devoted a quarter of a century or more to the television industry and who have made significant contributions to Chicago broadcasting. As you know, the TV Academy is dedicated to encouraging and rewarding excellence in television. This process now begins at the high school level, where this year, for the first time, students from across the nation submitted videos to be judged. 3 national winners are from our Chicago chapter: James Dorsey of Harper High School in Chicago, Mark McLean of Lake Central High School in St. John, Indiana, and Bob Selatich from Glenbrook South in Northbrook. Please stand for a round of applause. I think you were just applauded by more than a millennium of combined experience in this room, so remember that. The TV Academy continues to support students in their college years with scholarships offered at both the national and local levels. And as television careers develop and flourish, the TV Academy offers several workshops each year. Just last week, TV journalists who covered the war in Iraq told their dramatic stories and answered questions at a TV Academy symposium. And we all know about the Emmys, the symbol of television excellence. This year, the Chicago Midwest chapter received more than 550 entries. The Emmy recognizes an excellent achievement in television. Meantime, the Silver Circle recognizes a lifetime of excellence in television. Tonight's honorees will receive a Silver Circle plaque, a commemorative pin, and a lifetime TV Academy membership. And we thank Mayor Daley for the letters of congratulations he is mailing to the newest members of the Silver Circle. We are honored tonight that several Silver Circle members inducted over the past 11 years are with us here. If they would please stand and let us all applaud for John Calloway, Thea Flaum, Al Hall, Dick Kay, Harry Porterfield, Jerry Rose, Howard Shapiro, Jack Taylor, and Jim Tillman. Thanks very much for being here as we honor and induct the class of 2003. There are 2 more Silver Circle members here this evening who I did not yet mention. Quite appropriately, they are hosting tonight's event. They are both terrific Chicago news anchors. They earned their places in the Silver Circle with their excellence and dedication to the field of television journalism for more than a quarter century. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Silver Circle honorees Warner Saunders of NBC5 Chicago and Walter Jacobson of Fox News Chicago.
Thank you, Jim. I hope it's true
What
they say about little things, big things in little packages, or little things in big packages. What's that saying? What's that saying? Good things come in little packages.
I'm not going to help you out with that one.
I am trying to at least look like I can be like you. Okay, we're ready to go.
Put your glasses on.
Okay. I was inducted in 1998.
Yes.
One of the nicest days of my life.
Indeed it
Not
was.
only for me, but for my family. That's a tremendous honor. The people are the people that we care about the most. You were inducted before me. Great for you, too.
Yeah.
I mean, one of our proudest moments.
I was the class of 1995, and I remember it as if it were yesterday. But you know what?
What?
We're still working, aren't we?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
for the moment.
Yes.
Okay.
You have some news to tell us tonight?
No, I hope not. Any changes would be bad for me.
Well, you know what's going to happen. First, you know, he's still working and I'm still working. He does the 9 o'clock news over at Fox, and I do the 10 o'clock news over at Channel 5. So he's going to take over half of this show, and then he's going to go out and go to work. And then I'm going to have the other half. So, Walter, it's all yours.
Okay, Warner, thank you. And so let us get underway. To induct Ron Weiner, our first new member of the Silver Circle, are Bob Manowith, along with, God, I keep forgetting his name. White hair, bow tie, better than Chris Matthews, better than Connie Chung, much better than Bill O'Reilly, my guy. We're so happy anytime Phil graces our presence in Chicago. One of the greatest of all times. Phil, thanks for being here. Let's begin with Bob Manowith. He's been a broadcast journalist for 37 years. In fact, was responsible for some 4,000 editorials at GN over his time. We welcome you, Bob Manowith.
Right here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bear with a guy who's a little nearsighted and has a problem looking into the lights, but I'll do this as quickly as I can. My assignment tonight, as I understand it, is to introduce Ron Weiner to you and give you some highlights of his career. Ronnie and I met many, many years ago when we were neophytes at WGN. We've known each other for quite a long time. We got our gold watches together. And Ronnie worked sign-on in the morning before television was a 24-hour medium, and I was just getting off of work, working the overnight in the newsroom, so our paths would cross when he came in. Shortly before Phil came to Chicago, Ronnie and I were asked to put together a daily television talk show called Our Town Today. We co-produced it, got the guests. I did whatever writing was necessary and prepped our rotating hosts. Ronnie directed, and it was a delight to watch Ronnie direct every day. Just fascinating. Ron had a great rapport with the Cruz. He had come up in the production area, which was a lot different then. He had been a prop gopher, a floor manager, a director, and done all of the things that they all knew were hard jobs to do. So he got the most out of his Cruz, and he brought something special to working with the Cruz. The control room glass was merely for show with Ronnie. You never needed it, never needed intercoms because he screamed right through it. Ronnie also had a stint in the Navy. Cryptology and communications. Some say that his director's cues were cryptic, but everything got done. He communicated, as I said, with a loud voice, but the Navy did a couple of things for Ron. First, he had enough active duty and stayed in the reserves, coming out, by the way, as a captain, which is the equivalent of a full colonel in the Army or the Marines, with a very good pension. Second, he was stationed after 3 years in Newfoundland. They took pity on him and brought him back to the States, not only to the States, but to the Glenview Naval Air Station for training. Being so close to home, his parents schlepped him to a wedding one Sunday. Specifically, they didn't tell him at the time, but specifically to meet the maid of honor, Phyllis. Took her out and proposed on the first date. If you haven't ever seen Ronnie in those dress whites, you can understand why she said yes. I do remember one summer when he was on reserve, he showed up. It was probably to pick up his paycheck, but those dress whites, I want to tell you, all the ladies in the office couldn't get over it. At Glenview, Ron got some specific training that really helped in his career. He was going to be an airborne controller, which meant that he sat in an airplane telling the pilots of a bunch of other airplanes what to do, giving commands. So it was sometimes got confused, of course. Ready, aim, take camera 3. I mean, no, fire missiles. But Ron's favorite story about those old days has to do with one of the first shows he ever directed. It was called Bugs, Bunny, and Friends. A guy by the name of Dick Coughlin stood next to a prop tree with a hand puppet of Bugs Bunny, did sketches which were wraparounds for cartoons, and the sketch writer was a young fellow who was just spreading his wings, flexing his creative muscles. And one day he wrote a sketch that ran a little long, and Ron said to him very politely, if you can imagine that, we've got to bail, kid, because we've got to hit the commercial on time. And the young man said, but this is brilliant. And Ron said, we got to get out of this because we have the NAB code for commercials in children's shows. Roll film. And the kid said, stay live. And the guy in the film room said, who's the boss? At which point Ronnie picked the young man up, grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, tossed him out the door, locked the door behind him, and continued to roll the film. That young writer, by the way, you may recognize the name, Fred Silverman. We all know where Fred went from Channel 9. Ron went on to win 3 daytime Emmys out of the 7 consecutive for which he was nominated. Still a record that nobody has achieved, nobody else has achieved. His work has also been nominated for Peabody's, for Film Awards. His style of directing talk shows, the quick, sharp cuts to get spontaneous audience reaction, has set a standard which is still followed, a very sincere form of flattery. And there is so much more that I could tell you about Ron, but I want someone else whom you would like to hear from much more than you want to hear from me, Phil Donahue, to tell you the rest of the story and introduce a tape. Phil?
Well, first things first, you haven't changed a bit. Many of you look younger than I remember you. And it's good to be among friends. You can go home again. And it's especially important for me to be able to do that tonight as you celebrate the work, the gifts, the talent, the enthusiasm, the legacy of a man who knows me more than he ever wanted to. Ron Weiner literally directed thousands of Donahue shows, all of them live, every take a final cut, no opportunity to meet with the geniuses who will decide whether we'll dissolve or fade or whatever might make the product better. Not unlike a sports event, the Donahue Show was live every day, and you can take a look at any show that Ron Weiner directed, and you will see a man who knew what he was doing, a man who had vision, who somehow could anticipate what might happen, who often had a hard time finding his host, who was running around a studio in front of cameras, behind cameras, tripping over people. Ron Weiner and I go back so far that he worked with me before wireless microphones. And not a few women were almost hanged in the first row as Phil made his way all over the place and dealt very, very well, we should say. Ron Weiner, in addition to all the gifts that he has, is also a very well-centered, emotionally stable human being who had to deal with a volcanic so-called talent who hosted the show all those years. And when I used to go in there during the breaks and say, how come you have that? Why did you, holy cow, he'd look at me, and then he'd talk into his mic, and he'd say to all the cameramen, all right, come up on 3, cue Phil. And I'd have to get the hell out of the control room. It was a wonderful way of deflecting all the behavior that was all of us were capable of when doing a live show. Ron Weiner also directed shows in just about every venue that a television director could possibly have. The Donahue Show in its lifetime originated from at least 50 cities in this nation. Not all of them Los Angeles and New York. Many of them small, out of the way, crews of various talent. Ronnie would get off the plane, and by the time the first show was ready to go, he knew all the crew by the first name. They respected him. And of course, part of what he did so well is demonstrate his respect for other people. So the long and short of it is, I can never, ever repay Ron Weiner. Nor can I ever actually meet the wonderful opportunities that he's provided for me. Not only these wonderful remotes that we did where we met so many people, but also I had the chance to meet one of the finest families in all of Chicagoland. Phyllis and Ron are the cover of Parade magazine. This is a fabulous family. They have a son who is soon to replace Michael Eisner at Disney. Their daughters are both headed for Nobel Prizes in their respective fields. And the truth is that when it comes to parenting and the demonstration of what a family should be, you look up ideal family in the dictionary, there's a picture of the Weiners. And these were the people that I got to know and love over the years, more years than we care to remember. And throughout it all, we had our ups and we had our downs. We often bit off more than we could chew. But Ronnie was on time for work the next day and the next. I probably, as the years have gone by, I appreciate now more than ever what pressure he had and how easy it is to second guess a person doing a live television program. And I'm sure I did more than once. And now I'm here as a senior veteran to say, I get it, Ronnie. I'm sorry it took so long. But I see as each month goes by and as I watch more and more live television, I see how deft you were, how really, what an artisan you were, how you framed the picture, how you knew when to do the take, and how difficult it must have been because nobody knew where Phil was going to be next in the audience. It was putting the cameras behind the audience and putting the audience on television that made us different. But oh my, the problems we created for the director, because just when you're ready for the big moment, somebody would stand up right in front of the camera. Ronnie had to deal with that every working day of his life. And you'll stick a pin in the Donahue Library, pull out any show you want, and you'll see one of the finest directors ever in live television. Cindy Petrasso has prepared a film which will give us just a brief look down memory lane and the work, the legacy, and the truth about Ron Weiner. Roll the tape.
When we moved to Chicago, we had the same feeling we had when we started in Dayton. I remember landing at O'Hare and looking out the window at all those houses and apartment buildings in this megalopolis, and I'm saying, what if they don't like us?
No kidding. Can you imagine some guy after a six-pack saying, here I come, Harry?
Here he goes! Oh!
Ron Weiner served as director of the Donahue Show for 10 years. He was always good.
I would not allow any of my kids to walk out the door looking that way.
Yeah. What if they insisted on
I
it?
couldn't insist. I'm the mother. Hey, listen, kids. Get with it, clean yourselves up, and go to work.
Always in focus.
You are the only man who is copying after Jesus' name on the back of your magazine?
I
think Jesus had a sense of humor.
Always on the money. Whenever we were panicky or had a problem, we had a phrase to solve the problem, and it was "Get Ronnie." And he was always there, and he always solved it.
We haven't gotten our just due. I'm tired of that.
He's too prejudiced. What is he going to do for us? It's a black.
Look, I worked hard and I put that money in the government. Why don't the government come in and do something for the poor people? We, the people, that's what we need.
And the winner is Ron Weiner. One of your Nazis in the Klan.
I certainly would like to thank the Academy for this heart-stopping moment.
And proof of where he's been in this industry, and he's been a lot of places, follows with this material.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go.
I'm the blue fairy.
So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question, but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
I'm Fraser Thomas. Welcome to Family Classics.
So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
How have they segmented their market? They go after that part of the market that likes things that work.
I've had the pleasure now of working with Ron Weiner on 3 major projects. And first of all, they've all been extraordinarily successful beyond my wildest imagination. The most exciting part from my perspective is that Ron lets you be yourself and doesn't make you be somebody else that you aren't, and at the same time turns out a product that turns you into much more than you thought you could be when you started.
The term negotiation is a gaming mechanism. A game is where you care, but not that much.
I felt that they'd gotten what they deserved.
We are all afraid to begin with of people who have AIDS.
You know, I'm scared enough for everybody.
The world of Anne Frank.
I want this diary itself to be my friend.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Live from across America.
Ron Weiner is one of the best in the business.
Come over here and get our picture taken. Oh, okay. I got to be in the middle. Well, I tell you, it's pretty emotional. I didn't think it was going to be this way, but I got to tell you, thank you to Bob, who I drove nearly crazy as he was trying to prepare my introduction, and to Phil Donahue, who flew in today specifically to be here this evening, and whose presence, as you can tell, touches me deeply. A wonderful man. And to Cindy Petrasso, a friend and compatriot on the Donahue staff, who prepared the tape that was just presented and whose energy and great sense of presentation will not surprise anyone who knows her. Thank you, Cindy. And I'm very grateful, of course, to the Academy for this evening that is capping what has been, up to now anyway, my life in television.
Many of us who have succeeded to any extent in our industry could not have done so without the encouragement and loving support of our families. Program schedules, responsibilities often find us away from home just when we are most needed. I'm proud to acknowledge, as Phil already did, my wise, patient, and loving wife, Phyllis, and the operative word there is patient. My goodness, what she has had to put up with over the past 48 years. I think she thinks she deserves this award as much as I do, and she does. And our 4 wonderful children who have already accomplished so much in their young lives. We have, in order of their seniority, a history PhD, they're all over there, a freelance writer and a U.S. senatorial staffer, a noted New York City historic preservationist who is also the mother of our grandchild, the amazing Griffin, and a cable network vice president. Please do not send him your resumes. I do appreciate so much their having come in from both coasts to enjoy this evening with Phyllis and me. But they're not the only family to whom I owe a great deal of thanks. The WGN family nurtured my early career, offering opportunities that in that era could not possibly have been available anywhere else in Chicago, if indeed anywhere in the nation. I used to say that there was never a day that I didn't want to go to work. Sign off, sign on, every day presented exciting challenges, not the least of which was the chance to work and learn from a truly great group of television directors as they blended the efforts of engineers, stagehands, and talented performers to make what is live broadcast television. And in those pre-taped days, if you screwed it up, it went to Mars, never to be seen again. So I consider it an evangelical calling, really, that compels me to say a bit more than just a word about the people who direct live or live-on-tape television shows. And let me say that while I and my late friend Bill Heitz are both being honored tonight, too few of us have been up here to receive this gratifying award. My role models and contemporaries at WGN were people like Bill Friedkin, Bud Ellingwood, Jack Jacobson, Jerry Gregoris, Dick Dorshuk, and Bill Lutzer, who is here tonight. Alan Hall, a former president of this Academy chapter and who a few years ago preceded me to this podium, is on that list too, as is the late Arnie Harris, one of the finest sports directors ever. In trying to communicate to my Columbia College students what being a director really means, I tell them, if you don't say it, it won't happen. That is the essence of television directing. We often live on stress. Hell, many of us dispense it. A few of us lucky ones even thrive on it. It keeps us alert. I've been told more than once that I may not ever have had ulcers, but I sure knew how to pass them out. We may tease, cajole, praise, berate, whatever it takes to get every crew member positively involved, to convey to them that we directors are in control, that we have a plan, and that we know what we're doing. We may not, but we don't want them to know it. As Phil used to say, I'm almost finished. First, let me return to the family theme I led with and talk about being a part of a family that grew out of what has been for me the central, most meaningful, important work of my life in television. The privilege of being part of and directing what I truly believe was the most important daily popular television program ever presented to the American public, Donahue. Many of the Chicago staff are here tonight, and while we might often have been a wacky, idiosyncratic bunch, we became a family, and we are all still extremely proud to have helped Phil Donahue change the face of TV talk, as in the process he invented a genre that is still growing strong today. We addressed the concerns of all Americans, especially women. We angered, we shocked, we dared, and we took some very big risks. After all, we were live and basically unedited. We only took out some and bleeped some words once in a while, just for sensibility's sake. We didn't want to, but the stations insisted on it. And we became what David Halberstam once called America's graduate school. What happened in our studio was often raw, but it was always real. We tried our best to make America think and reason, and we knew we were making great television. Donahue became a household word and an answer in crossword puzzles. Every show wasn't a winner, but enough of them were to earn nearly 20 National Emmy Awards in the show's 11 years here in Chicago. We laughed a lot, we partied a lot, and we fought a lot, and sometimes we hurt each other a lot. It was never easy, but it was always worth it. The past 45-plus years have been an occasionally bumpy but mostly exhilarating ride. Thank you all and the Academy for giving me the chance to tell you about just some of it tonight.
Oh, Ron, how totally, thoroughly well-deserved. You're a foundation of our Academy, truly. Our next member of the Silver Circle is Bob Petty. Our next inductee is Bob Petty, and to induct him is Charles Thomas, who's Bob's colleague at ABC 7 News. As a Midwest correspondent at ABC and Channel 7, you know, Charles Thomas has covered every kind of story imaginable, not only in this area, but around the world as well. Please welcome Charles Thomas.
Thank you, Walter. As any of you who know myself and Bob Petty, as you will attest, Bob and I have been much more than colleagues down through the years. In fact, we are the best of friends, almost brothers really, who have experienced many more profound personal moments than we have even professional memories. So on this momentous night, I am sharing the same kind of excitement and pride being felt by Bob's family, his wife Cora, his son Robert Jr., and daughter Corey. Robert Anthony Petty belongs in this Silver Circle, the Hall of Fame, so to speak, of Chicago broadcasters. From 1971 until 2002, last year, he was a living bridge between what we saw on television back then and the brilliant diversity that we see on Chicago television today. So how did this man whose first job, he tells me, was chopping and picking cotton in a small town in southeast Missouri, how did he find his way in front of a camera and into the homes of millions of people in the Chicago area and at times around the country? The answer to that question does not come in a resume listing the institutions of higher learning where Bob Petty studied and excelled, nor can it be found at a list of stations at which he worked during his long and successful career in Arizona and here in Chicago. Instead, I believe the answer to that question about Bob Petty and what makes Bob Petty so special is that Bob is a voracious, insatiable reader. If you go into Bob's house, now Cora, I'm not meaning to say you're not a good housekeeper, but you see books everywhere. It's hard to find even a yard, a square yard of wall space in Bob Petty's home where there is not a book. And I believe that it is that quest for knowledge, the quest for truth, that has lent perspective, or that lends the perspective that was so prevalent in Bob Petty's reporting down through the years. And as for his ability to build a 3 decades plus career in Chicago journalism, I think it's time for this Academy to pay tribute to WLS-TV for its long-time, unrivaled tradition in this market that appreciates the tenure of people like Bob Petty, Hugh Hill, John Drury, Harry Porterfield, Joel Daly, Russ Ewing, and others, all of whom are distinguished Silver Circle inductees. On behalf of your friends and former colleagues at Channel 7, colleagues throughout the industry and the profession, And most of all, on behalf of the viewers, we thank you, Bob Petty, for a job well done. Roll the tape, please.
I love the news business, always have. Didn't realize until not too many years ago how much I really enjoy this business. I've been a newsie all of my life.
Born in Memphis, Tennessee, Bob says he started writing stories in 3rd grade. He was a star basketball player in high school and then majored in TV production at Arizona State. Bob arrived at Channel 7 in 1971, and the tall, slim, and handsome Bob Petty was an instant success in those days when there were very few blacks on Chicago television.
I once saw an article in the Chicago Defender who said that Bob Petty was the first black permanent anchor man in Chicago. When I became weekend anchor here at Channel 7 Eyewitness News in 1973, 74, something like that. So what changes we've seen, and most of those changes for the better.
Weekend anchor, but more than anything, Bob was a general assignment reporter.
He was one hell of a street reporter, but more so than that, he's a nice man, you know, a very nice man, and I wish him well.
He covered it all during his career, and he covered it well. But perhaps the most amazing thing about Bob is that in 31 years, he hasn't changed.
When I met you, how much did you weigh?
I weighed 168 pounds.
And what do you weigh today?
166 pounds.
He's quite a figure in Chicago. I think we're all going to miss him. He's been a well-respected journalist here in Chicago.
A wonderful career and a wonderful personal life with his wife, Cora, and their 2 children.
When my mother was pregnant, an angel flew over, and the angel lost a feather from its wing, and that feather landed on my mother's tummy while she carried me. Well, something happened, Frank. I've been a lucky guy. It's worked pretty good so far.
The man touched by an angel feather. Now, and way back in the days of the Flynn Daily News, Bob, it is at last time to kick up your heels.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to Bob Petty. Congratulations, Bob, on your induction into the Silver Circle.
Oh, thank you, Charles. Thank you very much, okay? Got that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Good job, Thank you. All right. Thank you, Charles. Obviously, I'd like to thank members of the Academy, Chicago chapter. I'd like to thank all of you for being with us this evening. I'd like to thank my wife, Cora, our daughter, Corey, our son, Bobby. I'd like to thank my friends who are here with us this evening and those who are not here. I would obviously especially like to thank Chicago, our viewing area. I would like to thank our viewers very, very much. It was a fun ride. And to answer the question that I've been asked I don't know how many times here tonight, retirement is pretty good. Somebody should have told me about that before. Direct deposit, sitting in the backyard, not bad, not bad. My wife and I were driving up Michigan Avenue on our way here earlier this evening, and it reminded me that when we first came here, 32, almost 33 years ago, we somehow ended up lost on Michigan Avenue. And now here I am back on Michigan Avenue again from a different perspective. Pardon me. Excuse me. Never dreamed, never thought that almost 33 years later I would be here this evening. We would be here this evening. We came with the intention of staying for only 3 years. But if there's one thing that I learned at an early age is when you find a good horse, ride it out. It has been a great deal of fun for me, and it's been the experience, obviously, of a lifetime. And a very special group of people that I would like to thank. I would like to thank the people that I've worked with at ABC 7 News, Channel 7 News, and especially with all of my heart and all of my soul, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. Thank you.
Did Bob take his picture? He did? Okay. Skip had to skip. So you're left with me this evening. Congratulations to Bob. Thank you very much, a very moving speech. We move on now to Robert Lewandowski to make his presentation of Ron Jasinski Herbert. Mr. Jasinski Herbert is editor and publication of Living in Polonia and a frequent spokesperson for the Polish National Alliance. Mr. Jasinski Herbert, would you please come to the stand?
Thank you. I was afraid that would happen, and I'd look like something out of The Wizard of Oz. He's a little tall. 3 decades in the media. Over that time, Bob Lewandowski has revealed himself to Chicago and actually to the nation and internationally in many, many ways. TV personality, radio host, newspaper columnist, and master of ceremonies at events too numerous to mention, and in fact, a film actor, which I think even he forgets at times. Bob's career harkens back to the early years of Chicago television when he did the polka go-round on the old WBKB. Some of you may remember the Belly-Bunny Cats station that preceded Channel 7, WLS. Later on, he did Press International, which was a fantastic show in which he interviewed, and live I might add, correspondents from across the world and gave an international perspective to the news that we got in Chicago. Eventually, excuse me, he moved to Channel 26 in those days before it became the Chicago version of Court TV. And I guess some of you don't watch those shows, do you? Channel 26, I do. Howard, remember, I still watch Channel 26. When Bob did the Bob Lewandowski show, which went on for years and years and years. Now, it's now known as the U. To the Polish-American community, Channel 26 was the Bob for Bob Lewandowski. As a matter of fact, I'm a few years younger than Bob, and I grew up with Howdy Doody and Bob Lewandowski. When I told my mother I wanted to watch Buffalo Bob, she automatically turned the channel to Bob Lewandowski. Bob also was an activist. He used his immense popularity in the community to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for worthy Polish and American causes. A man of great professional integrity. It was difficult times during which he did his show here. You have to remember that Poland was under communist oppression, and it took great diplomacy and sensitivity to cover some of the subjects that Bob had to cover. He's a man of the highest ethical standards. Always checked his stories for accuracy. And when he did, and when he took a position, he stood behind it. There maybe are two of you in the room that ever saw my TV show, but Bob was my ethical mentor in many ways. When I borrowed material from Bob for one show, he gently and not so gently gave me a short course in TV ethics. And those ethics could be useful, I think some of you will agree, to some people in our profession today. And now, as he's about to be honored, it can be revealed. In those halcyon days before Alderman Burke became the Surgeon General of Chicago, Bob always had a pipe in his mouth during his program. Even though there was a sign at Channel 26 that said "Nie palić," which means don't smoke Bob maintained that pipe for years and years. At any rate, we had a Christmas tree in that studio that all of us used for our programs. And on my particular show, and I don't know if Bob really realizes this till today, we replaced, and this is also long before Letterman ever put a pizza or a meatball on top of a Christmas tree, but we replaced the star on the Christmas tree with a replica of Bob's pipe. At the end of the show, the camera would zoom in as credits rolled, and it would be Bob's pipe that finished off that Christmas program. Well, it was meant to be humorous, but I can see now that it was fitting. But really, not as a joke, it was fitting because Bob was and Bob is a star. Could we roll the tape, please?
Direct from Chicago, we proudly present The Bob Lewandowski Show.
Państwu, zaczynamy nasz telewizyjny program, który jest oglądany w 3 stanach. Wiecie Państwo, Chicago, poza tym Milwaukee, South Bend, Indiana i Rockford, Illinois. I dzisiaj, mieli Państwo, mamy specjalnego gościa, którego witamy ze specjalnym honorem dla nas. Let's meet our guest.
It was the late 50s. Ike was in his second term, Elvis was king, and Marilyn Monroe was the heartthrob of Hollywood. Bob Lewandowski was producing his radio program at WHFC when he got that big break all people in the entertainment field look forward to. WBKB-TV selected him as singing MC of the musical program Polka Go Round. The danciest show on television, Polka Go Round was carried nationally over ABC television for over 2 years and remained a WBKB local presentation until 1961. What could he do to follow up such a success?
Известия, Moscow, March на Washington. La Prensa, Mexico, Marcha sobre Washington.
The Indian Express, New Delhi, opposing voices from the South.
The Spark, Accra, Ghana, the plight of the Negro.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bob Lewandowski. Last Wednesday, 200,000 Americans assembled in our nation's capital to participate in the greatest rally ever held for Negro equality.
Press Internationale was just the program Bob had been trying to put together for years. In 1961, he got his chance. That year, the Public Affairs series premiered on WBKB-TV Chicago. The half-hour weekly show reported how news from the United States was interpreted in the foreign press all over the world. The show aired for 6 years, receiving accolades in many local and national publications, and was honored in 1964 by a profile in the Congressional Record. Bob's work in television continued. He felt that Chicago's Polonia, numbering some 700,000 residents, needed to have its own programming. And so Bob pioneered the first regular Polish-language TV program in the world outside of Poland. The program, originating on WCIU-TV Channel 26, has featured some of the community's greatest leaders and representatives, and is still running strong after 28 years on the air.
And a very pleasant good morning at 7 o'clock in Chicago as we present The Bob Lewandowski Show. This program is dedicated to the Polish-American members of our community.
And thank you very much, Roy Belowija. Dzień dobry Państwu. Zaczynamy nasz dzisiejszy program.
Radio was the medium that utilized Bob's creative talents to the fullest. Bob's daily radio programs in the Polish language are on the air for nearly 40 years.
No i teraz na programie Northwestern League kawy i pierwsze wiadomości dnia. Wielkie zwycięstwo w Senacie, to znaczy ściśle mówiąc w Komitecie Spraw Zagranicznych Senatu. Także to nie jest, mieli Państwo, jeszcze ustawa, żeby się za szybko nie cieszyli, ale należy się cieszyć, bo to jest wielki krok naprzód.
He will be remembered in Polish radio in Chicago as the king of AM drive time.
Thank you very much, and don't believe him. I just met him for the first time here today. I knew his brother for a long time, but not him. His brother was a very nice guy. But now, my president is here, the president of the Polish people. I was born in Poland. I only am in America not a long time ago. I understand that I can speak 5 minutes, but I am not going to because 5 minutes is long. And being on the radio for 37 years, can you imagine the young man, 37 years? I know that 5 minutes can be very dull and very uninteresting, can seem like a lifetime. So let's see what notes my wife has made for me. She wrote, please forgive my accent, even though some find it charming, but I'd rather not make any mistakes, of course. This reminds me of when I first came to the United States. I worked for sometimes one of the Detroit radio stations, WJLB. This was just before Christmas. And on the radio ads read, in Detroit, Hudson department store customers will receive free gift wrap with any purchase. I managed to say will receive free rape with any purchase. The only reason I came to Chicago in '53 was because my radio boss told me that I was a fool actually to be working for him. I have enough Polish people in Detroit to have my own radio shows. I thought to myself that it would not be very nice to be of the competition with a former employer and a man 30 years my senior. His name was Konstantinovich. He must be Polish. I pulled myself together, put a few things together, and headed for Chicago on the basis, que sera, sera. Well, all the beginning were very difficult, like everything else, but thanks very much. Always arrived working on radio, still do. However, that my first love is theater. Oh, I was working in theater, of course, even in Poland from here. I went and directed. What was the very, very good play? I directed of one of the theater in Łódź. Łódź is the city in Poland I was going to school to. Well, I came to Poland and to United States, and I learned it, and that there'll be Polka Go Round television show, and I learned it later on that Press International was the way I should do. That gave me the opportunity to meet many distinguished journalists. I won't mention any names of fear of omitting someone, and I wouldn't like that. But from the early beginning of my television encounter, I felt something was missing. And then Channel 26, WCIU TV was coming into existence with opportunity for ethnic programs. And so it hit me, why not open the Polish television program? And so I did. And Mr. Shapiro was my boss. He still is with Channel 26. Thank you, Mr. Shapiro, for coming here. I would like to mention also here that for the very beginning of my radio and television career, I had the good fortune to have Northwestern Savings with me. They are a very, very good people. Now is a large institution. Now it was sold to Mid-American Bank. And the president here is Mr. Smogolski, who used to be the owner and president. Actually, he was the president because it was opened by Mr. Gzemski, and Mr. Smogolski was quite the president. He was the guy who was leading me and letting me everything I know about America. My sincere thanks to Mr. Moskal. Mr. Moskal, who is the president of Polish National Alliance, and Mr. Moskal was the guy who made me a director of the Polish American Congress, and he has always been a good teacher to me. Thank you, Mr. President. And I also wanted to mention that on my television show, I had the pleasure to host such guests as Bill Curtis and Jay Levin, two distinguished journalists who visited Poland and were willing to share their experience with our Polish-American community. We did not, by the way, speak Polish on these shows. We spoke English. Now, on the other hand, I had an honor, really, and a pleasure to be a guest of very good actresses living in Chicago. That was Lee Phillips. You remember her? I hope you do. Being here today among the distinguished colleagues, I am indeed very touched because for a Pole by birth and an American by choice, this event has a special meaning, that the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences has accepted me into its midst, into a circle of poor people whose accomplishments are way beyond anything I could have done. But I am a Pole who came to a new country and was accepted by this country. And this is very important. And once again, thank you very much, everybody. And in closing, I would like to share the anecdote which I heard for the first time in my life at the National Convention of the Polish National Alliance in Philadelphia in 1960, as told by Bobby Kennedy. When the first pilgrims arrived in the United States on the Mayflower on the shores of the new land, the native Indians greeted them saying, "Welcome first, white folks." The pilgrims pointed to a group of white men at the forest of the nearest forest nearby. "And who are they?" they asked. "Oh," the Indians replied, "these people are the Polish people. They come here every year during the mushroom season." Thank you very much.
You learn something new about history every day, don't you? Now we come to the Pioneer Awards, which are special Silver Circle Awards that are given to people who worked in the very early days of television and were instrumental in building our industry here in Chicago. Tonight we honor Fran Tuchman and Jean Minetz-Downie, two women who broke the barrier by stepping into technical TV jobs when the men went off to fight World War II. The women are part of what Tom Brokaw calls the greatest generation. We'll meet both women on this tape, and we'll hear their history from my co-anchor, NBC5's Allison Rosati, along with a few words from Tom Brokaw. Roll the tape.
I'm Tom Brokaw, NBC News in New York, and I want to congratulate the Chicago chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences for giving overdue recognition now to the women who stepped into broadcasting during World War II when men were sent off to uniform. As I learned in writing The Greatest Generation, one of the greatest underreported stories of World War II were all the critical jobs that women filled while the men were away. And we know about Rosie the Riveter building ships and tanks and trucks in Detroit and in shipyards across America. We've even heard about women who were pilots getting planes from the aircraft factories to the military bases where young men would be trained in them. But very few people know about the active role that women played in Washington, for example, not just as clerk typists, but as cryptographers and as military aides ferrying secret information around the Capitol. And now we know that women were also responsible for keeping Chicago informed through its radio and television facilities by stepping into the jobs that had been vacated by the men. One more demonstration, I think, about why I call that the greatest generation. Everyone had a place, knew what it was, and answered the bell when it came. So congratulations once again.
In 1940, Balliman and Katz, a subsidiary of Paramount, signed on in Chicago with experimental television station W9XBK. Captain Billy Eddy, a retired Navy officer who had worked with the inventor of electronic television, was hired to run the station. During World War II, he offered the use of the station and its staff to the U.S. Navy to train radar technicians, graduating more than 80,000. The radar school took all Eddy's male staff to serve as instructors. The FCC, however, required the small handful of stations to stay on the air for a set number of hours each week if they wanted to broadcast for the duration of the war. Months after Pearl Harbor, the station hired 8 women to serve as the Women's Auxiliary Television Technical Staff, WATS. 27-year-old radio performer Fran Harris and 19-year-old Jean Minetz were among the women of WATS who answered an ad in the paper. The station's chief engineer, Archie Broley, trained the women in the studio by demonstrating the cameras, boom microphones, and control room. They were on their own, and in 12 weeks, they were on the air. They learned how to write, produce, light, stage manage, and broadcast television programs at the very dawn of the industry. Under Eddy's leadership, the station pioneered the use of miniature sets, multi-camera productions, and lighting specifically designed for television. From 1942 to 1945, the women of Watts created newscasts, quiz shows, talk shows, cooking shows, and war bond rallies. One Watts-produced program featured Burr Tillstrom Presents Kukla, the Patriotic Puppet. They painted the sets, wrote and produced the shows, and often performed on camera as well. In 1943, the station became WBKB, Chicago's first commercial television station. Following their pioneering television work, many of the women went on to successful careers in advertising. Later, Fran went on to run her own production company in California, and while in her 60s, Jean joined the Peace Corps. Their pioneering spirit, kindled at the birth of television, led to a lifetime of risk-taking and creativity. The TV Academy salutes the women of Watts.
We weren't considering that we had any part in history. It was just an exciting experience for us to be a part of something that was starting right from the ground floor. And of the 7 of us that started, I did most of the on-camera work. Besides the writing and directing and producing, I was the mistress of ceremonies for the evening and announced what the program would be. And we were all very, just extraordinarily well suited to each other so that we could fully support each other. We all had to know the other person's job, except I was the only person with any speaking experience, and so that's how I got to be the announcer. My very first night on camera with this auspicious group of people from the service, and to show you how actually well-versed I was, I turned to the general and I said, "Welcome abroad, General." My auspicious beginning in interviewing. Did I tell you we started at $20 a week? And all of us gave up better paying jobs to get trained. Every one of the 7, each one of the 7 had to be totally and completely interchangeable on every job in the studio, except for one. Only one of the 7 women had enough engineering training to be able to actually put the station on the air. Otherwise, we did the camera, we did the music, we did, well, they used to laugh at me. I'd crawl across the floor on my stomach to get from one set to the other. We had 3 cameras, which were developed by the man who put the station together for Balaban and Katz, and they were on barber chairs so that they could be maneuvered around. We had people from Hollywood because the Balaban and Katz owned the Chicago Theater, which at that time, you know, you didn't do just movies, you had vaudeville. So they had people who were coming out to be in the vaudeville shows, and none of them would miss the opportunity to go up and see a television station. We set the stage. The 7 of us set the stage. We had people that came out from theater in New York just out of curiosity because we were doing more than most of the TV stations were, and we were really considered an experimental station. I've read about the award for a long time, never dreaming that they'd go back in time to the staff at WBKB. And I thought, wouldn't that be neat if these gals got recognized? Unfortunately, neither Jeannie Minetz, who was the other person that's being mentioned with me, we lost track of everybody except each other. And we worked together, mostly together. She, among other things that she did, was to do all the artwork for the backgrounds of programs that I had created, like a scene in a department store window. She did everything on brown wrapping paper that she was able to buy from butchers in those days for little money, created them, and I directed in front of them. So I was real pleased that she was going to be a party to this. I truly regret that I can't be with you this evening. It would be my great joy to meet all of you personally. It's been a long time since I've been in Chicago. I just don't know quite what to say in terms of the information that you needed to make this selection. But this old gal has been around for a long time. And it's just a great joy and a great thrill to have this opportunity to thank you for making me one of your 2 selections for this year's Pioneer Award.
I just answered an ad, that's all. And, they were hiring more men. The men were going into the radar training schools. This is warriors, the Second World War. And so women were in Rosie the Riveter and, whatever else they could pick up. And the young ones did whatever, you're young. You don't know what you're getting into. You don't plan. You don't schedule. You just have fun. And I'm still having fun. For Captain Eddie, he hired 7 women, and there was a Kit Carson who was sort of in charge of, the female aspect of it. And whenever we had problems, we'd run to her. But he was very active in the station. My parents came from Europe. And when I started working in television, there were no TV sets in homes, And so she said, what sort of a job do you have? And I said, well, it's like pictures through the air. Everyone was very interested because I would disappear. My job was 12:30 to 9. So, and I wore these little B&K uniforms, and I couldn't explain really, what I was doing, because I'm not sure that I was, too aware of where this was going. But great fun, just a great fun. Imagine going from camera to boom mic to having a little children's show to doing, it was just nice. It was just nice.
So you did everything.
And what it did for me is it led to advertising. I was able to become a copywriter because nobody understood writing for video and audio. It was radio only prior to that, So that's the way it went. When we were in the control room, Captain Eddie had something called the micrometer drop. And that was, when they were putting on you were at the turntable, and if they wanted that music to come, this is so archaic now, you wanted music to come in, you had to just get that right so it would drop right in without making a sound, and then suddenly the background music would be there as they were doing their little soap opera or whatever. And not everybody could master it, and I was so proud that I'd get that. I got that right. So we had little moments where whatever you were doing was a new experience, and I always felt that I worked hard there, but I enjoyed so much of it. Technically, we were not doing, we could fade down, fade up, double dissolve, but we couldn't do all the things that you do on, in the medium today. This was pre-union. And so, you could be a part of anything that you wanted to be. You could become director. You can be a little part of a show, or you could direct one, or you could, do whatever you wish there. I don't think you have that freedom today. You are, you are specialized when you come into a job. You don't just